you believe in the existence of extraterrestrials?
Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where and when you're watching this broadcast. I'm Thomas Fessler, my friends, and this is Disclosure Tonight. Happy Friday, Friday the 13th. It couldn't be. Oh, yes, it is, friends. And it's good for me, and it's good for Disclosure. On that note, without any further ado, I want to go ahead and jump in the studio. We got a special guest who will be here for a short amount of time today, so I want to go ahead and maximize the time. Mike, Disclosure. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well, and we're going to have another fun show with our good friend Ivan, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight for Friday the 13th.
Oh, gosh, yes. Ivan Hannel is one of Lue Elizondo's attorneys. He's someone who's kind of got brought in Disclosure unknowingly, but, man, he has been man of the hour. He's taken a position. He's been in D.C. many times helping fight for the cause. He's prolific on Twitter with a lot of great posts. He's worth following. On that note, we want to go ahead and welcome in Ivan Hannel. Ivan, how are you?
Hey, good, everybody. I had a long week, so looking forward to doing some relaxing this weekend. But we'll see if it happens. Probably not.
Absolutely. So, top of the news we've got today. You may have some insight on it, maybe not. Mike, don't we have a UFO hearing that's been mentioned by Anna Polina Luna coming up after the 4th of July, but before the August recess?
That's what she's claiming, which sounds to me like July 26th. Which they had the David Grush hearing back in 2023 on that date. They could be looking for a similar date like that. We'll see. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Ivan, your thoughts on what's been going on in Disclosure? It's been an interesting week. A lot of things going on, a lot of controversial statements coming out of Tim Phillips, the former temporary director of ARO. What say you?
Yeah, we'll talk about Tim in a minute, but as far as the UAP hearing that's coming up, so again, I always distinguish between hearings and briefings, right? Briefings like in a SCIF or in an office somewhere, hearings, before the public. I don't, it sounds good. I'm looking forward to any hearings. Great. I've heard that, people suggest that, a Jake Barber or a Matthew Brown or whoever else might be, behind the scenes, new and maybe other whistle. I don't know. So it sounds good. But I always wonder, what is the point? That is to say, what is the objective of the hearing? The ufology community gets super excited and they're like, is there going to be a hearing? And then somebody says, yes, there may be a hearing, and or there will be a hearing, and then that's it, and without a greater explanation about, well, what's the goal of the hearing? What is the intention there? What do you seek to prove? Who are you asking to come, if you can say, at least generally speaking? So I take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because I just don't see the greatest of planning, but maybe behind the scenes it's going to be a tremendous, I would hope that it's going to be awesome. I just don't necessarily feel particularly confident. And one of the problems is that, well, beyond just we're going to have a hearing, and then, the ufology crowd typically is like super excited, and it's like, okay, how, what's the planning? What's the purpose? What is your goal out of this? I heard, I think, Representative Luna said that they were going to, and this was with respect to a SCIF, but maybe get a more bipartisan group together. I don't know, I guess, how that translates into the hearing, but maybe there's some intention of really creating something that is more collaborative with the Democrats too. I don't know.
It's needed.
It's good news. I'm glad to hear it. Let's have a hearing. But where is it leading? Where is it going? And that's still, I don't know.
Right. Well, when Annapolena Luna and everything, this initial task force was was announced for the declassification of national secrets, kind of what they call it. They had said that they're going to be going to all the different heads of the different departments and requesting information. I believe there was a deadline initially put out there of, what was it, February 18th or so, that she wanted to get all the information. And as the information was declassified or given to her, they were going to go ahead and share it with everybody before the hearing. But the problem is, there's nothing been released from Annapolena Luna except sound bites.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely gets people riled up, and it brings attention to the topic, I guess. So those are the good things. But as far as a substantive direction, I don't know what it is. I'm looking forward to finding out. I guess we'll learn more when they announce the hearing date, as well as who the intended people coming to provide testimony are. So at this point, I'm just, it gets to the place where you're sort of like, not boy who cried wolf, but just sort of listening and saying, okay, another hearing, great. Where is it leading? How are you trying to prove your case? How are you adding things up? Where is the strategy behind it? I do not hear, and I mean, I'm not necessarily privy to it for sure. So maybe behind the scenes, there is a grand strategy, but even amongst, Luna and Burleson and Burchett, or the task force itself, I don't know what their grand strategy is. There are statements like, well, let's defund Arrow and magically transfer its funding to the FBI, which, I mean, honestly, when you say stuff like that, I don't, you lose me from a sort of operational perspective.
Right, because did they not know how government works?
I think you're onto something. I think you're onto something right there. I think some people, and I'm not part of the government. Maybe they have it all planned out, and it's perfectly, this is a great grand design. But I think there is no design. I think this is haphazard. It is iterative, and to some extent, they're constrained by, what they have to work with. So there's kind of a yin and yang. I understand, but there's a tendency to just make sort of statements that are sort of, we're going to burn down the bridges. And it's like, okay, you're burning down the bridges, but what are you building? I guess I don't feel, and I'll just be very blunt, I don't feel the task force at this point, from what I've seen, is building, has a lot of experience building things. You building a case. Now, maybe they're doing it behind the scenes. Maybe they're doing it in a very sophisticated way that, defies easy viewing. But I don't know about, I guess I'll just we'll have to see it when we see it.
Yeah.
So,
spoiler alert, Ivan, your instincts are on the money as usual, and there is no grand scheme. So you're correct with what you're saying. They're inexperienced, the task force, and they want to burn everything down, but I know that it's a lot of chaos going on in the halls of Congress. They don't have a direct plan on building a case to do anything with specifically. They don't have the power, the authority to do anything anyway.
Yeah, but even if they didn't have the authority, you would have the right intuitions. Okay. I mean, you don't necessarily have the authority, but you have the right intuitions. And, I mean, I think Matt Laszlo interviewed Gillibrand earlier this week, and she said she was opposed to defunding Arrow. I mean, there's that. Even the authority, Luna implied that I thought the implication was that the FBI should sort of assume Arrow's funding or something to that effect. And, there's so many complexities there. I mean, FBI is sort of supervised by the Department of Justice, and it's a different, and as opposed to Arrow with the DOD. And I mean, maybe it would work, but I just find it very strange, like a strange way of projecting a plan, a coordinated plan. It doesn't seem like it's there. Now, maybe behind the scenes, it's all being really, it's all going great.
Right.
But not from what I can tell. And so that's why when I hear things like there's going to be another hearing, or there's going to be a skiff briefing, or we're going to, or we should defund Arrow, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence, frankly. That's where, that's the end of it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I can tell you where that came from, and it's all ad hoc, like you said. They're flying literally by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
There was a hearing, but there was 2 behind closed doors classified briefings that took place a couple of weeks ago with the task force members of Congress. And they met first in the morning with Arrow, and they didn't get anything out of that, which is typical for Arrow. And then they had a meeting in the afternoon with the FBI. The FBI showed them video footage of some UAP that they've never seen before and gave them some information of the investigation that the FBI has been conducting with a very small unit that they have tasked within the FBI to investigate this topic. And at that meeting, representatives of the FBI unit had asked the members of Congress for funding and direct authority in legislation to properly fund and investigate this topic through the FBI. And that was the official request that was submitted during that meeting. So members of Congress, like Luna, took all of that and then started putting out those social media tweets about defunding Arrow and trying to get the FBI to do a professional job of this. So that's where that all started from.
Yeah,
I don't believe there's a grand scheme to affect any type of change. It was just something that came up out of the blue, and they're running with it.
You know, I wonder sometimes, like, is the whole point, you know, we're going to have another hearing so that we elicit more testimony so that eventually we can convince, the House Oversight Committee as a whole to allow us to issue subpoenas? Like, what is the goal of all of this? At the end of the day, this is ultimately illegal. You know, it's either a public, I mean, there could be several different intentions, right? One intention might be to just give more information to the public through the dissemination, you know, through simply having more hearings. So you have more hearings, people eventually hopefully get wind of them, and then the topic becomes more popular, and therefore you have more juice to find, you know, other representatives or other senators to move legislation or to make, you know, other demands. So there's one possibility might be just greater public dissemination of this whole case. And I think that's good. Another thing might be to convince other senators or representatives, you know, probably representatives, that there is a case to be had. And that could be another objective of hearings, to influence and get more representatives, which I've said we've needed since, you know, I've become part of this a bit, you know, to get new people involved, new blood. Okay, well, it could happen, but how are you building that case? And then lastly is, you know, maybe some efforts by the task force itself to really resolve the issues. And I don't know, you know, lacking subpoena power and lacking, you know, some shocking revelation out of one of these hearings with somebody who brings the goods, I don't see that happening. So, you know, I don't know what the goal is. Is the goal greater public, you know, recognition? Is the goal persuading other representatives to join the party and senators too? Is the goal to actually get to the heart of some investigative conclusion without subpoena power, but through public hearings? I don't know what's, you know, I don't know how it's working. Not that, you know, I'm privy to this, so you know, that's a congressional thing, but I haven't yet heard anybody articulate a comprehensive explanation of what is the goal and how are they going to achieve it. We understand, I think, that at least Luna, Burleson, Burchett, and perhaps some others are persuaded that there is a there, but how do you know, okay, I'm glad you're persuaded, but what next? Simply defunding Arrow, and I'm not a fan of Arrow, but still, how does that accomplish the task? I'm just not seeing, again, I'm not seeing the strategy here. Maybe somebody can tell me, here's the strategy. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
Be very happy if they had one and I was somewhat reassured. But in the absence of strategy, you know, it's like putting together a case, and I've seen lawyers do this where they just depose random people, ask for random documents, you know, take random depositions, do random things. And at the end of it, you're like, you don't know what you're doing, do you? and you get the sense of it, and those cases generally don't resolve in their favor. So I'm skeptical, but always looking forward to, again, more information is generally better. But I will caution that with every hearing that does not result in progress, and it's possible because you can always get, it doesn't just go in one direction. You can go up and then you can go down. And if you have hearings that don't result in progress, especially with this campaign by the Wall Street Journal and the former directors of Aero and assistant director, you could see regression rather than progression. So there's dangers in all these things. You got to use your head about it. I'm waiting to be for some illumination, some understanding, and we'll see what happens. So that's kind of my thoughts. I'm interested, but pretty skeptical.
Yeah,
you have good reason to be. I can tell you, to answer your question real quick about Congress and this task force and what is the goal ultimately. I know that there are senior members of Congress that have decided to keep the UAP caucus and members like Representative Anna Paulina Luna in this task force and conducting these hearings to keep them tied up and busy with this nonsense and get them out of the hair of the rest of Congress that is focusing on more prosaic issues. And so far, that strategy seems to be working. But ultimately, what is going to be the goal for the members of the task force itself and the general public? Like you said, I don't see one as of yet. And I also believe that you're right, that they may not have one, or they may not directly themselves be aware if they even have one or not. I think right now they're just going through the motions, which they've been doing. Doesn't seem too particularly organized to me either, or the public. And what the end result of that's going to be? Well, don't they have a time limit over their heads that was just recently extended?
yeah.
We could go from one time limit to the next, and at one point, they just won't renew, and then that'll be all she wrote.
But Mike, I got to bring up the question: what happened to those hostile witnesses Grush said we could bring forward? Also, as Laura in the back said and brought up, this is supposed to be an evidence-based hearing. Where in the heck is the evidence that that's supposed to be shared with the public? So when it gets to the hearing, everybody can talk about it. You know what I mean? Those are all promises from Luna up front.
The documents.
Go ahead.
They're supposed to release and declassify documents before each and every hearing. That was the plan, and it was supposed to be coming all the way up from the top on the executive branch, the White House.
I think Ivan was trying to say something on this here.
Yeah, I did. I didn't mean to cut him off. I'm going to let him speak. But okay. I just wanted to put that point in there. Go ahead, Ivan.
Sometimes I have some very basic questions. I mean, I'm not an expert. I can be pretty ignorant on some of these things for sure. So, take it with a grain of salt, because I don't claim any kind of great expertise. But I will say that the idea, one of the things that, this whole social media sphere likes is this idea of sort of a combative approach to, and you just mentioned that, Dave Grush was talking about hostile witnesses. Again, going back to the house metaphor, you don't build a house by having every subcontractor come in and start arguing with each other. You build a house by getting all the people in the room and making a plan. And sometimes people don't work well together, and you have to look at that, right? But I think this adversarial process is a really strange approach. It seems, frankly, it just seems more for purposes of salaciousness and attracting political attention. For the benefit of some people, rather than saying, we're going to get into this, whether it's a skiff or a hearing or anything else, and we're going to build a case not through necessarily the confrontation in a hostile way. I mean, for example, in a skiff meeting, let me just, for example, describe one thing. From my understanding, when one of the skiffs was supposed to have happened, there was supposed to be a number of witnesses. I don't know the exact number, 10, 15, whatever it was, but whatever the number, it could have been less than that. I don't know. But, if you only have a few hours of time with people, you really can't do much with it in a hostile or adversarial way. I took a deposition just yesterday. I only spent about 3 hours because I didn't need a ton of information, but I did have, a 7-page outline of questions. And, I kind of thought, it took a while to plan, and I had one witness and to myself. And I could not get, I got what I needed to, and it was great. But it takes a lot of effort. And adversarial approaches, like a deposition, by the way, I never run a deposition in a really adversarial way because I get people to talk and get what I need out of it, but although sometimes I have to be kind of pointed. But my point is that, to imagine that you're going to get 10 or 15 people, and remember, different perspectives, different experience. Somebody comes in and wants to talk about A, somebody else wants to come on and talk about, B, C, and somebody else wants to talk about D. I don't think this idea of being adversarial and gotcha and hostile is the way to approach things. I'm not saying that it might eventually be needed. And I know everybody wants to burn everybody. They want to fire people. They want to destroy things. They want to burn the bridges. They want to do, well, great. How do you make a case by burning everything? And you create a more hostile process with the fact witnesses themselves, if they have something to tell you, of substance, where you say, well, we're going to come in here and we're going to get you. That sounds much more like, I want political attention, and therefore I'm going to say things that attract that, than I'm going to get people together in a room, share information broadly, see where we can cooperate with each other in reasonable ways, develop prosaic next steps, and lead all of that to the goal of disclosure by this overall strategy that builds upon things iteratively and prospectively. So I guess I think the whole tone of approaching this in an adversarial way certainly is fodder for everybody on Twitter, but you will go nowhere.
Well, I think, to my understanding of criminal procedure, I can tell you that when the term hostile witness came up with David Grush's testimony, it had to do with trying to use subpoena powers to compel and force a witness to testify who doesn't want to testify. Henceforth, then it becomes adversarial. That was the premise of that.
Okay, that's fine. And, maybe he knows many people who should be subpoenaed. I remember he talked about the 40 witnesses. I don't know if all of them are, or around 40 witnesses who are all hostile or all cooperative. But I guess what I'm saying is that, sure, if you can subpoena somebody and, and whether that person responds in a particular way, I don't know. Let's see it. Right. But again, then I ask myself another question. If you have an adversarial witness who if you have a witness who you must proceed in an adversarial way with, because that they have information that would expose, would move disclosure substantially forward. Well, you already know that information yourself, don't you? Why then can you not say it? It's kind of a strange thing. It's like, I'm going to get this guy in here and he's going to tell us all these secret things. It's like, well, if you already know the secret things, why are you bringing them there to say it? I don't know where or what's the step after that? Is it important that their testimony be put on the record? We've subpoenaed witnesses in Congress, and they've lied, and we haven't. I don't remember the last time. I'm sure there's been a couple, but I don't remember where Congress has jailed somebody for contempt. So this just does not seem like a approach which I understand well, but there may be a methodology and a reason behind it, and more power to them. In the meantime, we keep on living. We have a lot of other things going on in the world. So, but for our favorite topic, disclosure, I see that what it sounds to me much more like is a building process rather than an adversarial one. But this takes it out of the realm of all the people who want to burn things down, subpoena everybody, beat everybody up on the media. It's a different approach. Let's build our case by getting the people who have something to say that is productive, that gives us some information. And when we get to the adversarial part, okay, that's when we move. So, but I think we're really far from that, frankly. We only have this, at least in the House, a few people. Maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe, there were allusions to Democrats who are more interested and want to be a part of various things. So I'm hopeful, but my hope isn't very big. It isn't very large.
And that's based on what's currently going on in Congress and in this country. It is so politically divided because of the actions of the current administration that I don't think either side is going to play nice with the other side at this stage of the game. That's another problem that gets in the way of disclosure. And until that's resolved, and I don't see that being resolved anytime soon,
but
I
even
don't see things moving forward.
That's America now. But that's America, guys. I mean, right? This is America. This is reality of who we become. Right? It's not just about, the disclosure issue. It could be about any other issue. We're about 50-50. Everybody sees the other person in the wrong, in a bad way. I'm pretty much of a centrist. I've never said, I'm not an experiencer. I'm a centrist on the issue of disclosure, in the sense that I believe there's a there, and I have various reasons for thinking that. But at the same time, I don't, I don't know how, it's going to take a minute to comprehend that. But I tend to be a centrist politically as well as, as well as on this issue. And I don't think that the extremes lend to good decision making. Hasn't in a lot of ways, and as a country, we're not resolving the problems despite the strong affiliation with Republicans or Democrats or the people who believe they're there for disclosure, and the people who are it's all circular reasoning or and we should get to the Wall Street Journal stuff about the secret. That's insane, but I just don't think this is the way to do things. But I think people like me who are more sort of in the center of like centrists in a lot of ways, we're kind of homeless. And so it's okay. I just watch people be, I watch this whole thing as sort of I hate to say it, but sort of an amusement because, I think that disclosure is important for whatever the story ends up being. But are we going to get there anytime soon? We do not have the type of statesmen that we need to run this forward. I don't see them. Now, this is not to say there aren't some smart people in Congress. I know there are, but it's not as many as you'd like. So, I think we're in an interesting time. But events are, regardless of whether I had that kind of confidence or not, events are moving things forward, and we're seeing more and more things. We had Matt Brown's sort of cryptic post, which I found interesting. And of course, we had this Wall Street Journal article, which was, even in the time since we sort of talked earlier in the week, now we see something, we had the interview with Green Street and Tim, and my gosh, things have changed even then. So it's remarkable. That Wall Street Journal article, as I predicted, and I said this on Monday, is going to be seen in retrospect, I think, as one of the most utterly stupid campaigns by the anti-disclosure people, whoever they may be, by Arrow and the former director and Sean Kirkpatrick and whatever. And I think it's going to be seen as a disaster in the future for the anti-disclosure people. So they've made a really weird move. So one and two questions I have about that are, the article, first of all, was not particularly well written. And I joke about it that I had to keep trying to reread it because it was so poorly written. I kept distracting myself, opening up tabs. And it wasn't just I was angry at it or, I was just like, this is just pure allegation. Poor, the sources are barely understood. It just seems like it, all I remember is the picture of Sean Kirkpatrick sort of walking in the woods. I was thinking, I wish he would walk back into the woods. But what was that? And the two questions, people always get into the substance, and I understand for people who are attacked like Bob Salas, who I've never met, there's a reason to rebut the specific claims made in the article. But the real questions that people haven't really explained or really discussed as much as I wish are, why would you produce such a poor article? What is it a prelude to? Is it a prelude to the Arrow report? Well, if you have a great report coming up, why would you produce such a weak, at least, the first part, I haven't seen the second part. I don't know when that's coming out, but why would you produce such a weak article as a prelude to what would theoretically be a very compelling report? You wouldn't do, there's a mismatch there. So it's almost like, I felt there was a bit of desperation in the attempt. Now, if this is the best they could do, because I can tell you this article, people were being contacted, about it for several months, actually. I believe maybe 4 to 6 months prior. So this has been in the writing for 6 months. You could not think or imagine such a mediocre article to have been written over the course of 4 to 6 months. I mean, at least the first part of it. Now, maybe that's coming in the second part and kind of lift it all up. But I just saw it as being a really weak article. Again, I reserve the right to change my mind if part 2 is awesome. But I thought it was really weak. And so it begs the question of why did they need to come out with that now? What was so urgent? And the other question I have is, who is the intended audience of that article? I mean, people just assume, oh, it's the Wall Street Journal, but why did they want to put it in the Wall Street Journal? And who was it intended to reach? The American public as a whole? I mean, the Wall Street Journal is fine, but, it's kind of limited to sort of a business class person. Not everybody's going to say, I read the Wall Street Journal. They could have done it in a different way, perhaps. So why the Wall Street Journal? Who is the actual audience for that piece? Is it other representatives? Is it other Congress people? I don't know. So for all those things, I'm a bit confused. Who's the audience and why the timing now? All I can tell, though, is that the article was really weak. And I'm glad people are rebutting it. But to me, I see it as almost a real misstep. And it's almost a good thing, right? Because the more missteps they have like that, however weak or not wonderful maybe the process is right now in Congress, if they can just keep misstepping like this, it's great. Because look at their explanation, right? Their first explanation, the sort of the circular storytelling amongst a small group of people is now that there's been a giant conspiracy to, delude active members of the military at the highest levels that there were UFOs in order to hide advanced technology programs, which they will not even acknowledge exist. I mean, it's a very curious approach. I don't know what to think about it other than I think it's going to be seen in retrospect as a big misstep for anti-disclosure, the anti-disclosure position. So I'm grateful for that. I remember when I saw the Wall Street Journal article and I heard about it, I'd heard that it was coming and people were concerned, just about, how it was going to look and what it would say. And then I read it and I was like, this is a gift. This is an absolute gift. But unfortunately, the first response is no, let's start debating every little thing about, and again, I get it, could an EMP device have been wheeled out in front of an active military base and then, triggered and then disassembled and removed. Sorry, that's my dog. But, so people start getting into the specifics, and I understand because they feel like they've been impeached. I get it. But, I mean, you got to say to yourself, this is a gift. This is a terrible. I don't know who it was intended for, and I don't know why it was put out now, being, given how weak it was. You could have beefed it up, and maybe that's coming in part 2. I don't know. So to me, I thought this was a gift. I am super glad it came out. I was, but the average response was anger and fear to the Wall Street Journal now opining, colluding or whatever you want to call it. To me, I was like, guys, this is a gift. Let's run with it and see where it goes. So, sometimes you don't have to be the best general. You just have to have another general on the other side, not know what they're doing. And, you rely on your adversary's mistakes rather than, your own skill.
We had the Wall Street Journal, but then we had the follow-up coming from Stephen Greenstreet meeting with Tim Phillips from ARO.
Right. And we also had the video with Tim Phillips that was the interview with Greenstreet. And that was really curious, too. I as I was watching it, and again, it was hard to get through it because you can just see Greenstreet's bias and some of the language he chooses. It's very frustrating to listen to the guy, frankly. And then Tim Phillips, watching him, did you think I'm not a good reader of body language or any of that stuff, but I do think he seemed to be more or less I can't tell whether he's telling his truth or not. I didn't think so, but what I will say that I do think was curious is the admission towards the end that they didn't have a sense of where what these black triangles were and all that other stuff. First of all, I thought that was a throwaway. because I think they are going to say that they can eventually resolve, it was put there on purpose. It wasn't just like, well, we figured out this grand scheme to basically that explains most of what is going on, that this was an intentional, deception of our own people to protect the div. Okay, cool. But then they go along with this other little bit like, yeah, but there are some things we couldn't figure out and they're a mystery. They're really curious and they're black, some of them are black triangles. Well, first of all, I don't think the black triangles are that much of a mystery, frankly, for a variety of reasons. And second of all, so I don't think that's true, actually. And then second of all, I think it was knowing that and knowing some other things, I think it was intended to sort of suggest that they're being open-minded when they are not. This is a calculated deception, in my opinion. That is to say, I don't think they were really saying, well, we've come to the conclusion that there's been a conspiracy to trick people, but don't worry, we're still open-minded because we don't know what these black triangles are, because I think they can resolve what those black triangles are. But what they're not saying is, okay, forget the black triangles necessarily. Let's look at the things that we really don't know where they're from. And there are things that we really don't know where they're from. Not the way they're doing it, which is trying to suggest, we don't know where these things are from, because I think at some near point, they'll say, oh yeah, we figured it out. It's all just advanced technology too, which it might be for those particular objects. So it's interesting. It'd be fun to be behind the scenes and hear all their strategizing. Maybe they'll be dumb enough to include somebody on a signal group one day when they tell us all their and then we'll figure it out. Maybe they'll put the editor of the Atlantic on their communication so we can figure out what the plan was with the article, what the plan was with this video, because it was all planned. This was not impromptu. The article was planned, right? The video with Stephen Greenstreet and Tim Phillips was planned. This is all planned. So what's the thinking behind this? I find it very curious. I'm not impressed, but what do I know?
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing, if we could, before you take off.
Sure.
The last thing we're hearing coming out of Congress is they're talking about bringing back the NDAA for yet a third time, and it doesn't sound like we're going to get any changes to it. Yeah.
Look, there's one side which is never let the, don't let the I always blank these things out, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, or whatever. I'm screwing that up. I'm tired, but on one hand, the one part of the UAPDA, is that what you're talking about? The UAP Disclosure Act? Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you might have said something else. On one hand, I understand its approach and the fact that it would be historic in the sense that it does define, non-human intelligence and all these other things, whether all of its mechanisms, whether it's eminent domain or, whistleblower protections necessarily, or the 9-member review board, all of this. I mean, on one hand, if we had it, it would be very positive because it would be an acknowledgement that there's a there. So there's that. On the other hand, there's other ideas like the registry. Sean Munger, attorney, put idea out for a registry. It's a different approach, but so I guess my thinking is, and I don't mean to be dismissive of either approach. I think there's good things about both ideas or both concepts, and it did. The UAP Disclosure Act did pass the Senate at one point, but right now I just don't see us getting more legislation of this kind past the Senate or through the House. I just don't see the leadership in the House positioned to, and I can't speak for the Senate, I don't know, but at least in the House, I just don't see that forward momentum happening. So, I mean, I guess that said, I don't know what other legislation, is being taken seriously at all with respect to this whole project. So, we'll see what happens with all of that. I guess I would say it's an uphill climb for more legislation related to UAP. I think they need to do a good. That's why the task force, which has many things going on. It would be great if they were very, strategic and were really moving in a particular direction, so we could know what their goals were, so that when legislation, like the UAPDA or other stuff that might be out there, that we knew how these things fit together better. And I just don't see the fit. I don't see the fit. Not that against any of these legislative pieces. I think they'd be great, but I don't see them getting through Congress, because I don't think the task force is doing the kind of, at least that I've seen, doesn't have the strategy and isn't doing what it needs to do to create the momentum needed to pass legislation. So we're putting sort of the legislative cart before the investigatory horse, if that's a decent metaphor. And so again, I don't see the investigation going great, but maybe behind the scenes there's a lot of progress being made, and I would hope so. But that's about that. And we have so many other things to get in. Now I will say one thing, kind of closing remark, is this, that Lue Elizondo suggested an idea of a national intelligence estimate to help discriminate between conventional drones of the kind that have attacked, been successful in Russia and more recently in Iran, just yesterday. Also to look at what might be described as advanced technology drones, which is what I believe has been over the East Coast.
Yep, exactly.
And UAP. And if we could engage something like that, maybe that would be a mechanism for, making more progress in this area. But I will tell you that, at least broadly speaking, the fact that we have drones now being taken seriously by the general public. Remember, most people, when you thought of a drone, what do you think of? Well, you probably just thought of like one of those little DJIs who, swoop in and take a picture of somebody's, swoop through a housing development, and you see it in a website or something, stuff like that. And then you have this idea of advanced drones that seem to be having come together due to advancements in technology. And the question is where do these advanced drones get their technology? I believe we do have advanced drones, and I'm quite confident of that. And we've had them for a while. Now, whether they display all of the characteristics, the 5 or 6 observables, however you want to think about it, well, they don't. I don't think they have all of them, but they may have some of them. And so there's this sort of a spectrum between sort of what we understand and can buy, for a couple of $1,000 or, $20,000, and seems to be very useful in conventional warfare. Then you have these advanced drones, which may have been derived, frankly, from some UAP, I think in part, and those are very curious as well. And then, of course, the UAP, and I think what we know about those, I obviously don't know, but I think the one good thing I can say is the fact that drones are a topic of discussion is going to help disclosure, because ultimately some of this stuff is in the air, certainly in the sea, and in space. I think that the more attention we start paying to the drone topic, even the prosaic drones, the ones that you strap a little grenade on and you send it with a fiber optic cable and it destroys a plane or whatever, even that lends attention to what is in our sky. And last thing I'll say, I'm sorry I keep on going on, but I will say this as the last thing. The New Jersey drones, or the East Coast drones, that mystery, notice how little the public has invested itself in resolving it. We've accepted really pathetic explanations from President Trump's spokesperson, I forget what her name is, and then President Trump himself. And we've had illusions that we have some advanced technology, but the public has just barely moved. I mean, this is wild. This shows you how much ground we have to make up, that the public is not paying it. It doesn't care. It needs I hate to say it, but it may take a very significant event within the United States to get us to pay attention to not just the prosaic drones that can walk into Luke Air Force Base and blow up a bunch of F-35s one day. Could easily happen. Remember, I don't know that I don't know how I don't think our systems are particularly good right now internally. We could have a big problem. And then the advanced drones that loiter for hours and go to who knows where they're coming from and going where they're going from. some of which may be ours, some of which may not. You know, we got to take advantage of this drone issue if we want to make progress. So instead of just getting so fixated on you know, some of the other things, why don't we return to the prosaic things and say, you're right, drones are a huge issue, regular drones, advanced drones, and whatever UAP may be. Let's find out. Yeah. And that's where, and if we had that as the strategy, our strategy is to resolve the drone issue, all low, middle, and high, and the task force were compelled in that direction, maybe we would actually make some real progress. Instead, they're sort of trying to eat the whole elephant, you know, and how do you do it? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe they can do it in the same way, Ivan, that the Secretary of the Army said that, we've got a soldier on the moon.
That was wild, too. I mean, I can't even figure out what that guy was talking about either. I mean, was he saying we have a soldier and, you know, we've had soldiers or military personnel or people with military backgrounds on the ISS? But I mean, the ISS is not the moon.
No.
You know, it's not even near the moon. So why he would have said that? I mean, you know, I mean, I feel almost crazy at times. Am I having the psychotic break or you? Because what are you talking about? A soldier on the moon. And then, you know, people say, well, you know, maybe he really meant a soldier on the moon. I don't know what he meant. I saw it just like everybody else, but rather than chasing that, which does interest me, but rather than chasing that, you know, rabbit across the field, why don't we stick to drones and get the task force to focus on drones, all kinds of drones. And with that, we'll then make progress on what is really happening. I don't understand the strategy, don't understand the approach. Personally, though, I think events will carry us forward. That is to say, you know, I think disclosure is going to happen, not because of some great, well-orchestrated, great plan by, you know, frankly, the task force or anybody else, but events on the ground are going to create enough chaos at some point to propel the disclosure issue farther. And I would never wish it, but if somebody took a drone and, you know, did something in the United States, you can better believe that we get a real attention right to this drone issue. And then that would encompass the UAP issue as well as perhaps advanced technology derived from UAP. I think we, you know, who knows what's going to happen, but I think events are going to carry us forward more so than anything else. And, you know, we'll see. Maybe we'll get maybe Matthew Brown or others will appear before Congress one day, or Jake Barber, and maybe they have some real things to say that could help us move disclosure forward. But again, I tend to be pretty practical about things, and I just see that the drone issue is just right on the banquet, ready for us as disclosure advocates to take advantage of it. Yet we just ignore it and go to, you know, what was happening, you know, 1967 with the EMP. We have this drone issue as a gift, just like this ridiculous Wall Street Journal article. Take the drone issue, run with it. You know, and if we got to that, you know, I think that would really help move disclosure forward. So that's my thoughts, but you know, we're a spectator like everybody else. Yeah, so those are kind of my thoughts. It's been a crazy week, crazy couple of weeks. People thought, and one last thing, I remember people saying disclosure was kind of, you know, people felt that there was not a lot happening and so on. And I knew, and I said, you know, you're being impatient. You can't predict when these things are going to happen. You can't just give up just because there was a lull. Because a couple of months ago, there's kind of a lull, and then now there's an avalanche of information, and you have no idea what's happening next. I think, you know, so I don't know which way we're going, but I think this year is going to be really, really interesting. Whether or not Congress gets its act together, I think we have a lot to look forward to. I just can't predict what it is.
Yeah, well, we're almost halfway through it, and it's been kind of a little rocky going towards it. No big bang to move disclosure forward. It's been a couple steps forward, 2-3 steps back, couple steps forward, 1 step back. You know, we're kind of in the same position, if not move back a little bit. Hopefully we can get some momentum, but it doesn't sound like potentially from new legislation.
Well, right. But I mean, it's because we have attention deficit disorder as a community. We don't stick to one thing and just drive it home. 1 minute we're talking about, communing with an egg psychically. Then we're talking about, debating whether there was an EMP device placed in front of, we will just go to one thing to another like crazy people, and then we just don't focus. Whereas the drone issue literally couldn't be any more topical. We've had Ukraine do a tremendous attack in Russia and get rid of a bunch of their bombers. We have now the Israelis do the same thing in Iran. All of these things fly in the air, minus the ones, that are perhaps in space and in the sea. So why not take that issue and just resolve that one issue? And with it, everything else begins to unravel. Instead, we're chasing 85 threads. I don't see how that profits us. And if you think these congressional committees have boatloads of lawyers and staff and all of that, they don't. They don't. And they have a million other issues. And the people aren't even experts. So, I don't have a lot of expectations in Congress. And unfortunately, the ufology community doesn't, just goes chasing things, one thing to another thing. And it's all interesting. I enjoy it myself, but I think we need a little more discrimination and intent to create a result. And that's what I keep thinking, at least in the back of my head.
Absolutely. I know you're short on time. I want to be respectful of your time.
I can say another minute if anybody has any questions or want to make a comment. I kind of monopolize
Mike?
things, and I apologize. But
anything else in the back?
My word vomit.
Yeah, no, all very good points, Ivan. As always, you're a very good orator and a speaker, and your instincts are always correct. Your assessment of Congress and the situation that's going on as far as they should be focusing on the drones. Are you aware that President Trump recently made a statement about those very drones in New Jersey? And he said that he knows exactly where they come from, how they're being operated, but he can't speak publicly about it. But he wanted to let everybody know there's no cause for alarm without offering any other explanation. That was strange. What's your opinion of that?
Well, like I said, I do believe we have very advanced drones that have characteristics that would be hard to explain. And I get this from sources who are not clients, let's put it that way. So, look, I as far as President Trump, obviously he's probably telling the truth. He's probably, he's saying the truth. Now, does he know where all of them come from? Well, he wasn't, and does he know what all of them are? I don't even know what he's talking about. He probably was told that some of them are part of, some of them are ours. But the question is what were they doing there in the first place?
Bingo.
Right? Forget what they, forget that that they're ours. Why would you have drones operating throughout the East Coast, and particularly above, New Jersey and Massachusetts and some other places? Why would you have these drones loitering around American cities? What would be the purpose of that? But nobody asked the follow-up question, just saying, "Hey, President Trump, that's great. What are they doing?" Well, I can't tell you. Well, why not? What would be the purpose of them loitering above American cities? They could fall out of the sky, land on the ground. What would they be surveying or surveilling? I think they were doing. I think they were there, but not everything up there was ours. So I don't know what these things are, but we don't ask the follow-up questions. We don't push, and obviously nobody's going to push too much on President Trump, or he's not going to answer and all that. But we just sort of accept things so easily, and nobody says, "Okay, that's cool. Tell me more. Why? Why are they here? Why can't you tell us why they're here? Why? What would be the intent? Give me at least some basic explanation." No, we just let it go. So in a way, we deserve our own fate of being ignorant because we don't push hard enough. And you know what? For that matter, let's ask the task force. What are these drones about? And I know that's not within their bailiwick of potpourri of topics necessarily, but it is, something to resolve. And, anyway, we'll figure it. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But although I'm confident that in time events will help us, I am not confident that that we're driving in a particular direction. So sometimes, like in a legal case, things can work out in your favor despite you not actually having a great plan. But that's not a good way to approach things. That's not a reliable strategy. So I don't know. We'll see. But hopefully we'll figure it out. And I really appreciate being here and giving some thoughts on it. And I really wish it's going to be a really interesting time. What's that? The Chinese saying or proverb that was, may you live in interesting times. Well, a few months ago, people were saying how boring it was and we're not making progress. We're now living in the interesting times. And with any good or bad luck, we may start living in even more interesting times. And that may propel, disclosure through sort of inadvertent means. At least that's a possibility I see. I hope it doesn't transpire in that way, but who knows?
You're right. I'm all for that. Any way that we can get to the truth and to the bottom of things, if it comes out, even if it's inadvertently, we'll take it. You're absolutely right about that.
We're just going to go right into, I can promise you, we're not going to resolve the drone issues. Nobody's going to ask the follow-up questions. And instead, we're going to focus on these allegations that there was a deceptive campaign to trick our own people. And that explains things. And we're going to we literally have things flying in the sky which beg our attention and lend themselves to the topic that we want to resolve. And instead of demanding relentlessly we chase down the drone issue, we're going to follow the psychic thread. We're going to follow this and that. And they're all interesting. And I'm doing some work in a lot of those things. But still, it's just, that's not the way to get things done. Have a single focus, make that point, get that to, get to the bottom of that. And if you can't do that, why should I believe you can do all these other things? I don't see it.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that. I believe Michael Sekuloff has a question before you leave. Michael?
Sure, no worries. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, this is the first time that I ever heard anything about hazing. I don't buy this story that these guys were hazing each other. Hazing doesn't last that long. What's your take on it?
I think that's a great point. I mean, how do you listen, I could go into this in a million ways. Like, how do you authorize a hazing program? I mean, you get a document, welcome, Colonel. Now that you have this responsibility, I want you to read this hazing document. And it, has this whole plan. And we have a series of we have a particular approach and we show people these photos and then we scare them to death. I mean, it's mind-bogglingly, it's ridiculous. And this is not to say that there might not have been some, silly attempts by people who were or were not part of maybe a legacy program to, trick people or have some fun. I'm not saying it's not possible, but as a global explanation for everything, it is just utterly preposterous. But notice we're following them down the rabbit hole. We're being distracted by this narrative of, this whole thing. So yeah, the hazing and, it couldn't be more dumb, but it is somewhat effective at getting us to look at that and say, okay, I'm going to forget what's going on in the skies. I forget these crazy explanations and statements by President Trump and his secretary that they're FAA research drones. Meanwhile, the military saying they don't know what they are. We're going to ignore all of that. And we're going to focus on, debunking or debating this issue of whether there was a ridiculous hazing program throughout the military and the Air Force to make people believe there was UFOs to protect secret technology. And none of it makes sense. It's just so dumb. I don't even know what to make of it, in my opinion. So yeah, Mike, I think it's crazy. Logistically, it doesn't make any sense. Analytically, it doesn't make any sense. But we are so dumb that we will get distracted by it and pursue it and debate it and start, rather than just saying, look, you guys are ridiculous. I'm not even, I've been in front of judges where people make crazy arguments and you'll see the judge go, you can see them and then they'll just go, okay, goodbye. And they'll just ignore it entirely. And I think in some respects, that's what we got to do. Forget the Wall Street Journal until we see what part 2 says. Maybe that will be more substantive in some way. But let's get back to the drones and figure out what they are. So I don't know. I think it's insane. We've been distracted and we keep getting distracted. I wonder by week's end, I definitely have ADHD, or ADD or whatever it is. But I think we collectively have it because we're just going to, I promise you, we're just going to start debating this for a long time. And meanwhile, stuff is floating over our heads. It's crazy.
Absolutely. What a great.
What do you think, Mike? Do you think that that's what do you make? I don't think there's any I don't see practically how a long-term hazing program to deceive
I don't see how that could be an excuse. I've never heard about it in over 80 years. And then they come out with this story. That's just a bunch of BS.
I mean, can you imagine doing that back in the day before email and where your documents and you have, how do you run this campaign of self-deception? It just seems insane. I don't buy it, but we'll find out. Yeah. So anyway,
let's not forget they had to with these fake programs that they got these high-ranking members of the military. Oh, by the way, they had to have classifications sufficient enough to participate in a program like that in the first place. So we're not just talking about regular, ordinary enlisted members of the military. We're talking about high-ranking classified people with clearance. And then they made them sign NDAs about this, and it was a big hoax.
I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Who would we be deceiving by deceiving our own people? I mean, that you want to deceive the enemy, but I mean, most Americans would not. Most of us are pretty patriotic. I think. I think we are able to keep secrets. I mean, to propose that we tricked our own people in order to trick our adversaries into believing that, I see that as ridiculous. It is so preposterous, actually. I can't believe we're even accrediting it. But it is very topical, and it's fun to talk about, so we'll get into it. And, we'll be stuck for the next 2 or 3 weeks talking about this just idiocy. And I'm not saying that, again, the second part could be more substantive and maybe has more explanation. But from what I've seen in part 1, I don't want to see part 2. I'll read it, but I am not interested. This is one of the most ridiculous arguments you could imagine. If it turns out to be true, we have a much worse problem than UAP or some advanced technology. We have a bunch of morons who've been tricky, just complete idiots who have been in governance and managed to enact a plan over multiple decades to deceive our own people, and have succeeded in doing it for what purpose? And what technology have we been hiding? What is this technology then that so deserves it? Is it, none of it even makes any sense. But I mean, I can't even believe we're even accrediting this ridiculous thing. That's why when I saw it, I read that article, I was like, God, this is just so painful to read as an article and as a substantive argument. But did it work? Yeah, because we're all talking about it, And what are we ignoring? The drones. And what did Lue Elizondo say? Focus on the drones and do something about them. And that could lead to more and more concrete disclosure. Are we going to get there? Probably not. We're going to chase the tail, chase the rabbit. Whichever rabbit they throw in front of us, we'll chase it down and get very angry and emotional and make less progress than we would if we focused on something very, very narrow and concrete. That's my opinion on it.
Oh, you're right. And there is an agenda. There is a reason they put this article out. The main reason is that the executive branch, the DOD, they wanted the public to be prepared for what they're going to be releasing with part 2 of Arrow's historical UAP report, which is going to have all of this in it that was in the Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah, but why do you set the stage with, I mean, I know that people like to set the stage with an article for a report and leak a bit of it and set the stage that way, but would you do it so badly? I mean, I mean, that's the part. Like, it suggests to me that there was an urgency to get something out. I didn't even know. I was like wondering, is this in response to what Matt Brown was alluding to, or?
Oh, you and I talked about that privately.
Or is it in response to potentially NDAA coming up, and we have the new, the National Defense Authorization Act, and them trying to reintroduce the UAP Disclosure Act?
Well, I mean, so the hypothesis there is we tell everybody that there was a deceptive well, let me wait. Let's put this together. The point would be we're going to suggest through both the article as well as through the follow-up, green suit interview of Tim Phillips, that in fact there are UAP perhaps, but most of this is a hazing ritual. However, in order to resolve whatever that is, we're going to introduce the UAP Disclosure Act, which would, through eminent domain or through the review panel, somehow tell us more about this hazing campaign. Like, I don't see those pieces fitting together. I'm not saying that there wasn't a purpose to the Wall Street Journal article with respect to the upcoming error report, but connecting the Wall Street Journal article to the forthcoming error report to the need to introduce the UAP Disclosure Act, I don't see how all of those link up very well, frankly. If I were on their side, I don't see it. So I don't know that it's tied to the UAPDA. Could be, but then that suggests the UAPDA is almost a that would suggest it was done with sort of almost a malintent, and I don't believe that. I don't. I think it's a genuine piece of legislation that was intent upon doing something positive. Whether it's the perfect way, I don't know, but I don't believe that it's a sort of a, you can combine all of those three things and say they're all sort of a distraction from disclosure. I don't think that. I think this Wall Street Journal piece has been precipitated or prompted by some urgency on their part to frame perhaps the forthcoming error report. But again, when is that error report due? Isn't it October? I apologize.
I think it's overdue at this point.
It's past overdue. But I think the point that Thomas is trying to make about the UAPDA is that if they're putting out this negative hit piece against the UAP topic and convincing members of Congress and the Senate that it's actually a fictitious thing that was created by the U.S. government, it would take votes away from the legislation being passed.
Okay. Yes. I see that, but I mean that's a peculiar way. I mean, not only for the UAPDA, but for any legislation at all. But then you'd have to say to yourself, well, wait, then they were anticipating that the UAPDA would be passed and they needed to act urgently to dissuade that. And I don't see that, at least from the House. I didn't see like everybody saying, we got to pass legislation. UAPDA is first on our list. We're going to get that going. I didn't see that. So it's like, if they reacted to the possibility of the UAPDA passing by constructing this article and then for this error, to support an error report that, is really weird, I just don't see it. I don't see, then they're thinking, like, always put yourself in their shoes. It's very easy from the mind of the suspicious person to say the reason they're doing these things is all of this. But what you actually need to do is, instead of inhabiting your own mind, is inhabit their mind and think about from their perspective. If you were part of, Tim Phillips, would you say to yourself, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the Wall Street Journal to create an article, and I'm going to feed them a bunch of nonsense. And then it's going to create the proposal that all of this was some sort of conspiracy upon ourselves. And then that's going to lead to the error report, which will give the facts supporting that. And that's going to lead to the UAPDA or any other legislation not being passed. But again, work your way backwards. How likely was it that the UAPDA or any other legislation about this topic was going to be passed this year? 2%?
Not at all. Not at all.
Why would you react so impulsively to do that? I personally think that the article, probably was to qualify what was coming in the error report, but
we also this is just part one. There's part two, which is going to focus on Lue and others.
Listen. Good. They can focus on Lue, fine. They can focus on whoever they want, Crush, whoever they want to. Listen, the whole thing is, and the tendency is to always take everything so personally. It's like, look, I see this as weakness on their part. Something desperately prompted them to issue out this very weak article, at least part one. Part two may be better from their perspective. Let's find out. But the overall argument is itself preposterous. And I'm not trying to be just totally dismissive of it, but it doesn't explain anything. I really don't see it. And then at the end of the day, does it explain our drones? And then they say, well, there are advanced technology drones, but where did that technology come from in the first place? We're still not resolving the fundamental issues. So look, things might change in a week and I may have a very different view. I always say if the facts change, I reserve the right to change my mind. But right now, if I were to try to inhabit the mindset of like a Tim Phillips or one of the people who are sort of, Sean Kirkpatrick, it's hard to say because Sean Kirkpatrick does seem very deliberative in the way he talks and how he measures himself and all of that. He does seem like he plans and premeditates. But this article seems like a misstep in that process. And so the only thing I can infer is that there was an urgency to attend to this in some way. I can't figure it out, honestly, right now. I'm pretty confused myself, so maybe it's obvious what I'm missing. But my view is that this is a misstep. Something was driving them to it. They put out a piece of junk. It's not going to work ultimately. And I don't know. Something else seems, there must be something else going on that explains this, but it's not UAPDA and it isn't necessarily just the error report. There must have been something else that would prompt them to act so weird. If you're assuming they're logical actors, which they seem to be for the most part, they seem to be, premeditated planning. Because you can't imagine both. One last thing, I guess I keep saying one last thing. One last thing is this. Either they're very cunning and premeditated and planning, and all of this was intentional, or you have to assume that they're entirely chaotic and ad-libbing it out of fear. I don't know what is true, but I tend to feel that from what I'm seeing is, at least on the anti-disclosure cabal, that they're more planned, more methodical, and thus this is a misstep precipitated by something which we don't know. That's my intuition.
Interesting, to say the absolute least. Wow, great conversation
Sounds
tonight.
like good intuition to me, Ivan. I think
I have no idea. Right. We'll see. Probably wrong, but whatever. At least we can just keep ignoring what's flying around over the East Coast. It's all been resolved.
No, it hasn't, and they're still flying around.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But I'm just joking about that. But I'm just saying this is how easily distracted we are. Let's get back to the drones. Let's figure out what they are. Let's move forward on that. But we'll probably be distracted with Aero Report and debated endlessly. We need to move past these lunatics and get focused on the key stuff. And if we can work on that, we'll make some progress. I have a feeling. So I wish everybody luck. I wish us all luck. I'm curious too. I don't have all the answers. I'm pursuing some other topics of interest personally, but I think they are interesting. So we'll see where all of that leads. So thanks very much, everybody. I wish you a wonderful weekend, and I don't know, maybe we'll have a really interesting couple more weeks, because these last 2 weeks with all that's gone on have been insane. And I think the summer is going to continue to be crazy. And
the summer of love again. It's been a while.
Oh my gosh, it is the summer of love. We're living in the summer of love right now. We don't even realize it. So, that's the way history is. When you're in it, you don't know what's going on. But listen, everybody, have a wonderful, excellent weekend, and keep your curiosity up. And we'll be back at it. Maybe part 2 of the article will give us a lot of information that we need. I don't know. I don't buy it.
No, neither do I. And we'll see what eventually does come out with part 2 of both the Aero Report and the Wall Street Journal article. But you enjoy the weekend as well, and happy Father's Day, my friend.
Oh, thanks, man. It's going to be a good Father's Day, and I'm going to probably just, I've got a bunch of depositions next week, so I got to prepare for all those. So, back to trial work and some other things. But I think one last thing is that all of you all, we should still be very hopeful. We are on the right side of history. One of the tendencies is that people in ufology get very, very nervous and very aggrieved and very upset and all of that. But when you're on the right side of history, I take it very calmly. Something's going on. We're going to figure this out. We're going to get there. It may not be with the task force as presently constituted. It may be because of other events, but we will get there. It just takes time. And it takes time because there's oppositional forces.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
It's a marathon, and it would be a lot shorter a marathon if we got more representatives interested in it. And maybe the task force will do some good things in that respect. I hope so. But, we need more Democrats involved. That's a good intuition. And
100%. I've been bringing that up for a while. Where are all the Democrats in this? This isn't a Republican issue. It's a bipartisan issue, my friend.
Well, to her credit, Representative Luna did say that she was trying to get more people from the Democratic side to take interest. So that's a positive thing. You got to say what's good and you got to say what's bad. And I think that's very good. I really hope that Congress does its job. We're very desperate, I think, to, I always look at the people who are older, and I'm 54, so I'm not young, but, the people who are getting older and who have been at this for a long time, don't they deserve some resolution? Don't they deserve some truth, whether even from their government? Don't they deserve something? And, I feel great empathy also for the experiencers, not that I know what that's about. I have never had one phenomenal experience, for better, for worse, but, for them to have some resolution about their concerns and the fact that the community tends to dismiss the experiencers. I mean, there's an interest, of course, but not to really take that more seriously, I think is because if you believe the premise that there's UAP, I think you'd find it very easy to believe that experiencers are telling some real truth. Now, what that is, I have no idea. Because I can't even comprehend it, but pay attention to them too. Let's be positive. Let's make this happen. I think it's going to take a little more time, and I think events are going to overtake us and drive disclosure forward. But we'll see. Let's. I'm hoping for the best, and I think it's going to be great. So anyway, everybody, have a wonderful weekend.
You too, my friend. Thanks for coming out. You have a great one.
Yeah. Bye.
See ya. Mike, what a great conversation, huh?
Oh my God, yeah. That was fun. Yeah, Ivan was chock full of information.
Oh yeah.
Discuss with us.
And we're not done yet, folks. We got some time to cover some things on Twitter we've been following for a while here, Mike. A lot of great stuff for us to talk about. One of the things I want to jump into here first is Shane Frakes. Also known as Old Vet Symposium over on Twitter. He's someone who's a remote viewer, someone who has abilities very similar to what I have personally, and I take what he says a lot of times very seriously. If we go ahead and take a look at here, one of the posts that he put out that he just requoted saying, "What if I told you that concern about something happening in 2027 related to the phenomena has already happened secretly? And your government knows this." Now, to follow up with that strong statement, he requoted his tweet the next day saying, "A program was designed to communicate with non-human intelligence. It worked, but it did not stop a communication and didn't go as planned. Whoops. The government and contractors are now panicking and trying to figure out what to do next. Something is now here that wasn't before." Mike, this sounds exactly like the Pandora's box syndrome that we've always been concerned about.
It was definitely on the bingo card.
Yeah.
From what I remember, yeah. But does he give any more information or provide any proof to substantiate?
He's giving a little bit more every day as time is going on. He's building this thing like anybody does out there. They're keeping the people back. He's talking about this stuff. He's trying to be careful to make sure he isn't going to get taken down. But this sounds interesting, and I like the details of where he's heading towards. Not saying that I believe it or I'm behind it, but this sounds a little bit more believable and stuff potentially than what Eggman has been saying. Just saying.
Oh yeah.
I gotta love that video from Stephen Greer in that news piece. Oh my God.
Exactly. That was a good point. So what else is out there in Twitter land right now?
Oh, what else is out there? Let's say, we got one here about, in response, this is about Eric Burleson coming in response to a Wall Street Journal report on UFO disinformation. Eric Burleson out of Missouri expressed concern about possible criminal violations of the law and plans announced to investigate the U.S. Air Force. Do you think this will really go anywhere, Mike?
No, unfortunately, but I think it should.
Yeah.
I think he makes some good points. but it's not going to have any teeth, and I don't think that they're really going to be too aggressive against the U.S. Air Force.
Oh, yeah. It's almost kind of like I would expect Eric Burleson sometimes to say,
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
yeah. Great
Something
intentions,
like
though.
that.
Great intentions. Just some of the times.
Yeah. When has ever Congress gone up against the executive branch and won? Zero.
Never. But we do have an audio clip here from Matt Laszlo at Askapol. Let me go ahead and get this up for our audience to hear it. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and play this clip. Here we go. Eric Burleson's comments on this directly, talking about how is this not legal in wake of the Wall Street Journal reporting. All right, so let's bring this up and let's play this audio clip. Here we go, everybody.
Mr. Burleson. Hey, how are you?
Good. Hey,
Did you catch that Wall Street Journal piece?
I did.
What do you make of it?
Well, you remember, like, that was my original worldview. And that is my, like, that's probably what he's saying is probably the case. I think it's the most likely scenario.
Interesting. But that kind of seems at odds with your guys' conversation with the FBI, with their unit. What do you think? They're all just silos.
So I would say, I do think that the people that provided information for that article did not have a full picture of everything that's going on.
Yeah, right?
They do not. And there's no way they could. But at the end of the day, I think they don't have the full picture. And I think that some of the things that were mentioned there were exaggerated because you can't tell me that there's a widespread hazing activity within the Air Force. That it's like pervasive.
But you know what, Mike? There was a pervasive hazing event that went on for new sailors every time they would go ahead and cross over the equator for the first time, where all the new sailors were completely hazed, where they're crawling through shit and everything else. So does it surprise you that potentially there could be hazing events going on? It doesn't surprise me because I've heard how the U.S. military operates.
Yeah, so have I. And usually in training camp or with low-ranking members of the military who recently were enlisted, they have procedures like that. But we're talking about, according to the Wall Street Journal article, high-ranking members of the military with clearances, which sounds like that is what could be illegal that Burleson's talking about.
Yep. It does. Let's listen to a bit more. I'm just throwing some doubt in there saying, yes, we've heard before stories about what the military has had a history of hazing. So for me, it doesn't surprise me if this was going on, but is it completely believable? I wouldn't put $1 on it, honestly. Let's listen a bit more. Here we go.
And there's that program that Yankee Blue. I'm gonna have to look into that and see if that actually was a fake sap. But no, when I talked to Grush, he said that's ridiculous. He's never, he would have heard of that. He's never heard of that.
Interesting. Well, it seems like, yes, they could have done that. And then there also could be a separate program. That doesn't seem mutually exclusive with...
Yeah. I just think that, if anything, what they just admitted is that the federal government's, that they are absolutely lying and deceiving the American people.
Yeah, right? And bad.
Either way.
Yeah. And when you guys go and have your next hearing, do you think focus on some of this?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking into seeing where there any...
Mike, again, Ivan brought up good points about this. Bring about this stuff up at the next hearing. The next hearing is supposed to be about talking about all of the information that's been declassified from the FBI, from the CIA, from the Air Force, from the DOD, from the Director of National Intelligence, etc. They're supposed to be coming forward with a huge tranche of information that's going to get passed out to the public. But Mike, there's been none of that. So, again, it sounds like an ad hoc attempt at a hearing versus we've got a cause and a reason why we're going to do it.
Exactly. No, you're right about that. It just, no, this is a real shit show. what's going on with the Wall Street Journal article and with the claims that they're trying to make. Did you hear about the senator that was arrested in California for protesting?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's been blown out of proportion. He came into the press conference. I saw it live. He started yelling at the Christine Nome as she was talking about stuff, over-speaking her, acting like an angry person from the left for this manner. And he was initially taken down. It's not like he introduced himself. Hey, I'm such and such. I'm here to talk about this. Please recognize my question. It was just he expected the people to go ahead and recognize him, and now they're just taking some of the stuff out of context, trying to blow it up a lot more than it is, because there's been, tensions in LA are high, and if they think there's a threat, what are they going to do? They're going to neutralize it, handcuff the person, and figure out who he is or what's going on to get to that point. So, yeah, it was kind of something that was a bit rough, but however, considering where everything is, what are your thoughts?
I think it's overblown. I think that I saw an interview the other day with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the former governor of California. And what he said on the late night show that he was doing the interview on, talking about his new TV show, that's they're having season 2 premiere on Netflix, Fubar, funny show. He said that in actuality, what you see with the protesting that they're covering on the news, he said it's all blown up out of proportion. It's actually a very small part of Los Angeles, and it's isolated to that area. It's not them burning the entire state of California down. So I think that there's too much hyperbole on both sides with this topic currently, making it seem a lot worse than it actually is.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I think everything should calm down. I don't really think that there's a need to make it look like we're in the middle of a civil war, when in fact that's not what's going on. It's too much hype.
Yeah, well, Mike, and I have to bring it up and show it. There is one heck of a protest going out there, and luckily we've got the same platform as these guys. So, as soon as we get a chance, we're going to go ahead and start covering these things as well, because, it's a thing of interest that's affecting our country. We'll try to take as much of a centered approach on this from one side or the other, not get into the details, but, this is the best entertainment you can get sometimes.
Oh, I agree. It is entertaining. It's like a variety show that you can watch to see what's going on all the way around.
It's the Muppet Show!
Yeah, I used to love that show. So did everybody else.
Oh, it's more than the drama that's coming to the land of disclosure from, who you call it, Red Panda and frickin' Tupacabra. My God. I actually mentioned their names. Sorry, Mike, I had to.
Yeah, I know. Did you know that there's going to be a huge military parade tomorrow? That's going to be taking place? Yeah.
But there's also a huge protest going on around the country that someone in the back was going and trying to promote in the front chat, and I killed all of those posts. Sorry, guys. I didn't want that being put out there.
No, not at all. We do not allow that on the show. It's show policy.
Yeah, that and self-promotion kind of gets in the way.
Nope. Yeah, just a little bit. But listen, we can cover that. That'll be interesting to see with the parade and the protest.
Yeah.
You think that they'll run into each other? The protesters and the parade? That would be funny to watch.
Oh, who knows? But, rumor is that there's going to be something huge going on in Philadelphia tomorrow.
Yes.
That is what the intelligence community is talking about right now. So we'll see if that blows up. But you know what, Mike? I've got a video clip here of George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell discussing the UFO cover-up and the current effort by the Pentagon to muddy the waters with this information. We have them on a broadcast that came out earlier this week with Chris Cuomo. You like Chris, don't you?
I do like Chris, yeah.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and bring this up here. And I can go ahead and honestly say it looks like Chris could actually use a visit to the doctor for a little bit of Botox on his forehead. Unless he already has. He might have it, so. Let's go ahead and play this clip and let's have some fun and watch it and reflect on it. Here we go, folks.
4 words: George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell. If you care about government transparency when it comes to UAPs, that's all you need to hear, and know that this is worth listening to. So let's bring them in right now. George and Jeremy, join us. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity, fellas, especially you, George. You're not easy to get.
I'm not full-on hermit yet, but I'm heading in that direction. Thanks, Chris.
It's good to have you both with us. George, when you look at the evolution of, look at Tom Homan. He wanted to hear what's saying. That's how big you are, George, is that Tom Homan, the head of ICE, he wanted to hear your interview in real time. So let me ask you this, George. When you are looking...
Oh, Mike, did you hear that? The Department of Homeland Security is interested in not just illegal aliens, but they're interested in interplanetary aliens. They're interdimensional ones. Here we go.
Who would have thought that?
It's a good one. Lord McCormick, thank you for all your great super chats, my friend. Freezerman71, I also want to thank the other people if you can get super chats during the show. Lord McCormick is throw out many out there during the show. Thank you, Lord McCormick. Look forward to seeing you. Hopefully you can join us on the show tomorrow and another one. And Phantom was Fanto once and twice, and Mr. Catfish 2100, Shelley Montgomery. Remember, folks, we are a fan-funded program, and we appreciate everyone's love and support. Let's get back to this Chris Cuomo interview. Here we go.
At the state of play right now, do you believe we've made progress, and what's your biggest question going forward?
Well, we have made progress since that New York Times story 2017. Congress has shown it's interested in the topic after being hands-off for more than 50 years. Major media at least dabbled in it for a while, now have pulled back. The academic community has come forward. Some people have stepped forward bravely and said, we want to look into this. So, yeah, there's progress being made. But, the keepers of the secrets, the folks who have manipulated this topic for almost 80 years now, are better at their job, I would dare say, than you and I and Jeremy are at ours. They have a lot of tools at their disposal. We've seen some of it come out in the last couple of days in national media accounts that muddy the waters, that confuse the public. They've admitted what we've all known for a long time, that they've lied to the American public, that they've lied to Congress. Now we know they've lied to their own military personnel, made up stories, propaganda. It's disgraceful. But now a lot of it is out in the open, so I would call that progress.
Jeremy, I was crestfallen when the Trump administration came in and they had told us, we're going to tell you what Biden wouldn't tell you. And then they gave us the same answer about what was in the air over the military bases and other places on the East Coast and elsewhere. How do you explain that?
I don't even attempt to explain that. I just know that the true transparency on this topic is going to obviously come through good journalism. And that's what George and I are focused on, is bringing forward whistleblowers like Matthew Brown and the Immaculate Constellation information, as well as just bringing forward, if we're lucky enough, military film footage of UAP. This is what we've been doing. We believe this to be the path forward. I'm not going to rely on anybody else to help us move this ball forward. I just think the public needs to fight for it.
George, when you look at this issue as a function of transparency, you say the people who are the keepers of the secrets, these days they use the word deep state. In these years of researching this, what is your best reckoning of who we're up against and what they're about?
It's a combination of Department of Defense folks, intelligence agencies, defense contractors. I think it's probably a small group of the people that really know what's going on. And even they probably don't know the big picture. Jeremy and I have been pretty far up the food chain over the years, me even longer than him. And I have never met anyone who really knows the true story. I've run into a lot of people whose job it is to confuse the public, to muddy the waters, to slip out propaganda, as we've seen over the past couple of days and over many years. I don't know what the big answers are. Like you, Chris, I'm not expecting to meet aliens. I don't believe in aliens. I was attracted to this story because of the paper trail of documents, memos, reports that were shared within the Department of Defense and CIA and other agencies before the Freedom of Information Act became the law. And in those reports, it shows they were saying, hey, this is real. It's not imaginary. It's not fictitious. It's real. It's not us. It's from somewhere else. We need to figure it out because there are national security issues involved. 1953, the Robertson panel gets together for CIA. They spend 6 hours over 2 days looking at UFO evidence, and they decide UFOs are not a threat to national security, but the reporting of UFOs is a threat, and we need to strip it of its aura of mystery. We need to debunk it. We need to use ridicule, and that's pretty much been the policy of the U.S. government ever since, and it ticks me off. It's what got me hooked on the topic. They're telling the public one thing. They're saying something behind closed doors to themselves that is far different, and it makes me angry.
And Jeremy, this was part of our bond, right? Is that when I first came to News Nation and I started reporting on this, media came after me about it. They'd mock me. They'd say, oh, man, he's doing anything he can to get ratings. And as George just said, I'm not looking to meet little green men. I mean, I'm open to it. The arrogance of thinking that this is the only planet in a universe that is constantly expanding. You know, I think there's an arrogance in that to believe we're the only ones that figured out carbon-based life. But let's put that to the side. They think they don't have to tell us what they know. And to me, it's a metaphor for what we've seen in so much of government in recent years.
It's way more sinister than that. It's not just that they don't think that they need to tell the truth. They're intentionally muddying the waters with misinformation and disinformation. If you looked at the ridiculous and sinister Wall Street Journal report, then we're supposed to believe that we didn't need a Manhattan Project to win the war. We didn't need the Apollo mission to put us into space because this is all some sort of government cover-up. The new conspiracy, Chris, is that UFOs are not real. That's the new conspiracy, the baseless conspiracy.
George, what do we need to know?
Well, one thing we know is they're never going to give this up. I mean, it's pretty clear. These recent reports that have been issued by Arrow and now the repeated media statements by the former Arrow staffers, there's nothing to it. There's no information. There's no proof. It's stuff that we made up. It's disinformation that we spread out there. We created the story about Area 51. We created the story about nukes being disabled. That's all us. All the technology that people have been seeing in the skies around the world on every culture, every continent, throughout human history, that's us. It's preposterous. It's ridiculous. There's no way we could ever accept it. But Arrow has made it clear they're not going to give this up. They're not even giving it up to Congress. I admire the people who've been pushing the ball down the field in Congress, but they've been manipulated on this topic as well. There's always something more pressing for members of Congress, for the public, you know, a job, your mortgage payment, your family, bills for Congress. There's Ukraine, there's Gaza, there's the stuff in LA that's unfolding right now. Always something more pressing than UFOs. So the people who tell these lies get away with it.
I have the same question for both of you. And by the way, you know, everybody in common parlance now uses Area 51. That was George Knapp that brought that into the recognition of the rest of us. George, if you were to meet the man, okay, in quotes, and the person who knows, what would be the three things that you would want answers to?
I'd like to know ultimately where they're from and what their intentions are regarding us. Are they interested in us? Are they where they're from? Are they interested in us or the planet more than us? Number two is, why the secrecy? I mean, I could see it in 1947. We just come out of World War II. The world's a mess. Do you need to share that with the public and tell them there's another intelligence more advanced than us? Well, why the secrecy now, though? You know, number three, if the technology is being tested in secret in some hangar somewhere, what do we need to get it done? Can we ever master it? And are the national security implications legit? Because there is a race for this technology. Us, the Russians, the Chinese, maybe the Israelis. How do we ever separate the UFO technology from national security concerns that would allow some president to step up to a microphone and say, we've been lying to you, here's the truth?
What can you add to that, Jay?
I just would have one question. You know, what made you look beyond your orders and not follow your oath? Like, what made you do this? Keep this from the American public. What is so scary to you that you are holding this back from the American public and hurting people's lives? That's what I really want to know. It's more of a human question about the secrecy of UFOs. I'm done with it. The American public's done with it. And I hope we crack this egg as soon as possible.
What do you think the watershed moment will be, George? What do you think has to happen that hasn't yet?
It's got to be a whistleblower who comes forward with a piece of something or some video evidence, something irrefutable. Or It has to be them, whoever they are, wherever they're from. I mean, they're the real architects of the secrecy. Wherever they're from, they've been here a long time. They could make themselves known in some irrefutable kind of a demonstration. They haven't done it. We get little glimpses, little bits and pieces, a look here, a look there. But they started the secrecy, and our government is happy to exploit it.
For me, Jay, you know what I think it's going to be? Advantage. One of these two poison parties is going to realize there's something in this issue for them versus the other one, and they'll go all in down that road. That is my suspicion of why it didn't change from Biden to Trump. It didn't kill the Democrats for Trump to come out with whatever that they were going to come out with. The same way that it wouldn't have killed Trump for Biden to expose whatever it is. And these cats are all about advantage, never about advancement of anything but their own aims.
Hope you're right.
Look, if we still have freedom of journalism, then we're going to push as hard as we can to reveal to people the best evidence that we have. That's our mission. That's what we're going to do. We're going to practice journalism.
Jeremy, I love you. Thank you for being here. You're always welcome. I appreciate the work that you're doing. George Knapp, I got to tell you, I'm so happy that I finally got a chance to speak to you. And I respect that you do the hardest part of the job that I love so well, which is you find a way to tell what people don't want told. And thank you for that. Thank you for your example, and thank you for your continued efforts. If I can help you guys in any way at any time, I'm a call away.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
What a great interview, Mike. Your thoughts?
Oh, I think Cuomo did a fantastic job with Corbell and Knapp. And did you catch what George said, not just about Russia, China, and the U.S., Israel? No one has talked about that publicly.
No. Wait a minute. Remember when they had the head of the military from Israel several years to come out and talk about all the different things going on with UFOs? That could be what he's referring to. Yeah, that's where he talked about the Galactic Federation and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
But see, the thing is, you had the guy who was in charge of Israel talk about it, but then you had this guy who was in charge of Canada talking about the same stuff. So you look at that and you say, we got two older guys here. They were both in power the same period of time, and they're both talking about the same story, almost word for word. So how can you look beyond that? I know it sounds great. It sounds like, it sounds crazy. It sounds like, the Galactic Federation. It sounds like, the Federation from Star Trek. Let's be real.
It sounds like hack writing to me, because like you said, Star Trek did it in the 1960s, Gene Roddenberry.
But no, we have two people who are really high up in the government, in the military, who would have had the purview of this stuff talking about it. So
Paul Hellyer from Canada,
the
defense minister, and Chaim Eshed, the head of the Israeli space program.
So these people in their own right, in their own world, should be very credible based on the positions that they've had.
Right, but they also know each other and have spoken publicly about that. So I don't know if I entirely buy the whole Galactic Federation aspect of this. I don't think anybody does. But he made that statement, and then if you remember, he disappeared. Chaim Eshed. Haven't heard from him since. And then they said that the reason he made that statement is because he was making a book. So nothing more further came from any of that.
Yeah, I know.
He was dead.
This is the part of me where I get away from the whole point, but you hear some different things, and you say, what, I'm not going to go ahead and bet the bank on it, but to tell you the truth, it sounds like there could be something more to it.
Yeah. Maybe. You might be right. We'll see at one point if any of it comes out. But did you catch what Cuomo said about the Democrats and the Republicans, that they could have come out with the information on the drones that Ivan was talking to us about? But the reason that they didn't is because it wouldn't give them an advantage over the other party? What do you think about that?
Frickin' party politics, my friend. It sucks. You know what it sounds like? You can't get one party to come to the other, even if there's a cause. So, truthfully, the reality of bipartisanship in UFO disclosure is a misnomer. It's something that can never happen.
Yeah, it sounds like something that is a good idea in practice, but not in reality, not in life. Doesn't seem to play nicely and work the way it should. And it's amazing that if he's right, the only way that we would get disclosure on the drones or UAP or anything is if one party would have a distinct advantage over the other. But see, think about that for a second. You and I talked about this on the show a million times already.
Yeah.
Why doesn't either the Democratic or the Republican Party, when they're in power, bring the truth about this subject out to the public? What is it that you and I have said over and over again as far as what would be holding them back? A farm, a zoo?
Yeah. We're on the menu.
Yeah. Something that they knew they couldn't bring out from either side.
Yeah.
Right?
Whether they're eating our consciousness or ourselves. Yeah.
Something is making them prevent the truth from coming out.
Well,
And I
it's
don't
got to
think
be something that's really, really bad, because Trump had said many times during his thing he'd bring out the information. We heard the reason from RFK, unless there was something really bad, I'd tell you everything. But it's silence, it's crickets, which means it's not
really
like, you know what, the aliens are here and we're all going to Disneyland. No, it's just like the aliens are here. Let's go to the funeral, Mike. Not sure who's on it today, me or you.
Right. It's something scaring the hell out of them that they refuse to make public.
There's something in the truth of the facts that are so wonderful. Like the beauty of Maxine Waters, that they're unwilling to go bring it out because it's going to scare the hell out of all of us.
Right. That would be the only thing, because I can tell you the current administration has nothing in common with the previous administration, but they seem to both be towing the same line. Why is that? It has to be something so severe that they couldn't bring it out if they wanted to. The only thing that makes sense logically.
Yeah.
So it seems like that may very well be the case at this point. Which means the only thing left is we'll have to do it ourselves. The public will
find the information and don't be a Ross Coulthart and sit on it and say, I'm sorry, you can't bring this information out. But it's so phenomenal. Stop being narcissistic and just bring the fucking information out. If you're going to talk about it, then disclose it. Otherwise, the story's not about you, Ross. The story's about what's here on this planet, and we need to get it switched from you to the actual fucking story. That's the problem. Everyone gets the information. Oh, if I brought that out, the person who told me that could get in trouble. Who the fuck cares? Let's move this forward. Let's stop pandering to the military cover-up, the government cover-up that's been going on for 80 fucking years. Now, let's, Michael Sokoloff, I know your hand's been up for a while, and this is a tough point to call on you, but
I have an answer.
Take it, my friend.
Hazed. They're being hazed.
I like that one, Michael. That's a good one.
We're being hazed?
That's the official government position on it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what Michael is saying.
I've got a question from Abe saying, where's the link to the back? And it's the same one we've always had. Just, since we had someone on the interview, I wanted to minimize the interruptions, which still came in during the show when someone was talking. So, if you want... But I took down the viewer call-in link during the interview because I figured, you know what? Let's just focus on our guest and everything else. Pin message. All right. There you go, Abe.
You can jump in the back.
Anyone else who wants to jump in the back, the link is up. This is your time for viewer questions. Would you look at this, Mike? We had 2 hours already. Small audience today, but I think there's a lot of people watching a protest like I am here.
Yeah, it seems like.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to, there was 35,000 protests scheduled for tomorrow. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's going to make me get up early, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we're going to go on a little earlier than the live show we have scheduled for tomorrow.
Yeah. Interesting guest tomorrow. Hope you speak Russian.
That's going to be a hell of a show for everybody tomorrow. And we're going to maybe go live with the protests earlier on before that.
Oh, yeah.
So it should be interesting for everybody. Should be good tomorrow.
Should be fun.
Yeah, I think it will be. Plus, we have the military parade which we've never had before in this country. So that'll be a first.
Oh, that'll be a fun one.
It should be.
Oh, it should be. We haven't seen one of those. They used to have them years ago, didn't they?
In Moscow, yeah. All the
Well,
time.
I thought they had them here a long time ago. It'll be either way. It'll be nice to see some of the cool shit that we have. The only place we never get to see it, though. So the only place that's ever put into use is in foreign countries in the Middle East. At least we can see the cool stuff we've been paying for.
Oh, yes. That we can. And
Yeah.
tomorrow will be the first time that we'll see something like that on display.
It should be really interesting. I honestly think there'll be a lot of hardware that no one's ever seen before.
Or the old hardware that's collecting dust and is obsolete, that they haven't got any use for anymore.
Maybe.
Like those Abrams tanks that they paid a lot of money for that. And the Army told them, we don't want them, we don't need them, we don't use them, stop making them. But they still got the contract. Government spending at its best.
Yeah, they haven't figured out how to cancel the contracts, apparently.
Yeah.
Craig
we'll
William
cover
here.
that, won't we?
Is there in Seattle? Could pop in. Who's in Seattle? Someone in Seattle? Craig, are you in Seattle? Oh, someone's in Seattle. So someone's saying someone in Seattle, they could pop in. Yeah. You never know. Yeah, interesting thing about the Pacific Northwest, we just don't have the regular protests up here. We have Antifa in Seattle and Portland. They put on a good show. Last night they actually had it going. There was probably 50 to 100 people. They all had dog squeak toys. And they're all squeaking it all at once. It's part of this thing they do around Portland. I have no idea why, but that goes back to the good old George Floyd protest days.
Oh, great.
I'm up to speed on this stuff, my friend.
Yeah. Yep. So
I hope if they get in Portland, they bring back the cop by the name of, he was nicknamed Robo-Pig. He was like almost 7 feet, just fucking solid muscle. Came in, they had some good music playing at the same time he came in. It was priceless.
It's a big cop.
Kind of doing almost like he was a cop from New York, Mike.
Almost. We had a bodybuilding cop here in New York a while back, so you never know. There are big cops out there.
Oh, yeah.
Depends on where you look.
Oh, yeah. And I say that in a jestful way just because we're watching these things going on, and it's good stuff. So, Mike, we're at the time. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet?
Oh, no. With we got a conversation we just had with Ivan. And everything that's been going on out there that we've been covering, and tomorrow what we got in store. No, I think we covered a lot tonight, Thomas.
Kathy's talking about Portland. I love it. Oh, yeah, wonderful times, my friend. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be another one tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Freaking son of a bitch. I have to get up early, but I can deal with that. I usually get up at 5 o'clock in the morning anyway. Even on the weekends, I still wake up early. You know what happens when you get old, Mike?
Yeah, eventually it catches up with all of us, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely,
Sooner
my
or
friend.
later.
Absolutely, if I can.
Another fun show.
I think the people can hear the sound effects better than me. For some reason, it's quiet in the.
It's very low. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good enough. It's about halfway. The audience can hear a bit better. I want to go ahead and thank everybody for coming out. More importantly, I want to thank everybody for the great super chats tonight. Holy cow, some great appreciation coming in from Necessary Dialogue. Nancy K, Lord McCormick, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. Wow. Thank you very much, Lord McCormick. We appreciate all your wonderful support tonight. Shelley Montgomery, thank you very much, along with Mr. Catfish 2100. Also, Fantomos Fanto once, not once, but twice for the support. Thank you very much. And Ash is on air, who's been in the back. Thank you very much for your love and support. Freezerman 71. I think we had Mr. Catfish 2100 in there somewhere, and Shelley Montgomery. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And then, wow, what a great show. Great opportunity to hang out with friends. And, well, Mike, as we usually say at the end of every broadcast, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everybody. But
go back to Party City where you belong.
Absolutely. We'll catch you on the flip side. See y'all tomorrow, everybody. Y'all come back now here. Take care. Bye-bye.